People can't even comprehend yet the difference that's about to happen.
Taking a sales process from 4 days to 2 minutes, it's incomprehensible.
Yes.
They refuse to believe it.
Yes.
And they want to move quicker. In a time it takes them 3 or 4 days to engage, they've already lost.
So you had a human with a Rolodex. That's how B2B worked. That's how enterprise relationship management capitalism worked. And then the cloud comes along. We can manage a global workforce of salespeople. Here's the opportunity. Here's the probability. Here's the notes from the last call. Point and click CRM. And people still think that's going to be the way it is. And it's totally not going to be what happens. Agentic AI will be as much of a paradigm shift as from Rolodex to CRM, CRM through to agentic AI.
Baseline.
So how we manage client relationships now fundamentally will be different. It's not going to be in the pub in Hawksmoor every Friday. It's going to be digital,
Which is a shame.
Which is a real
like
shame.
It's a real when I'm fortunate enough to get one, which
it's
is
a
probably
real
around
shame.
20. Where I've failed as an entrepreneur, and it even hurts to share this with you, is when I've been too early. It hurts you twice because you go too early, market's not ready, so you lose. And then at some point in the future, after accepting your loss, it happens and someone else wins what you should have won.
When you're building a startup, you build it to be anti-bureaucratic. And on the cusp of what's going to happen is happening with AI, and like you're basically going to just rethink how organizations operate and what's included in them. But you sell into enterprises. They're the ones that have got the budgets. So you then go, I've got to play the game. I need to play the game. I understand, okay, how a multi-threaded, multi-stakeholder conversation has to go. I understand how you've got to empower certain individuals to be advocates, to basically look like they can get promoted by adopting your solution. So you have to end up then just, even though you're basically a bit against how they think and operate, it's the game you've got to play. And this is 100% one of the sort of anything that slows down getting us up and running is it's an IT conversation, a CTO conversation, and a compliance conversation. And you have to go, and there's different, and what's interesting is you can tell the culture of a company based on their sort of level of risk or how slow and fast they are around this area. But it's the area that you get all of the teams excited around sort of what they can be doing with different AI tools across their business. You do have to go, it will slow down the minute it hits the CTO and the compliance team.
I mean, I was just considering what we were talking about there, which is, and do feel free to correct me, I don't want to misquote, but I feel there's like a slowdown of consumerism right now. Mm-hmm. People aren't buying new cars. They're not, because a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah.
There's a struggle. There's a lot of uncertainty. So, looking at it from the sales side, the sales process must be incredibly frustrating for a lot of companies right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's frustrating probably because there's not a lot of instrumentation in the sales process, pipeline management. Is that whole customer relationship management, do you see, is that changing? Is AI changing that? Like, tell me what you perceive as if an organization is looking at their own management of their sales teams, getting frustrated with missing numbers or, qualification of pipeline. What do you feel? I mean, why did you start Kaizan? Is it around that space?
Yeah. So I think absolutely at this period of time, procurement and expenditure is a bit slower. There's just a bit more of a assessment of the ROI and the knock-on effect. If your clients are slowing down in their spend, guess what happens? Your team slow down on defining budget, which slows down, and then the review around, is this going to be providing a really strong ROI for us? So you do. I think that everyone's feeling that. But what's interesting is at the same time you're looking at AI tools that are being sort of touted across Twitter and X and showing what their growth is. And you are seeing some insane revenue numbers at like the fastest growth that's ever happened in software. So I think you've got this combination of, yes, there is this macro, yes, everything's a bit slow in assessment, but if you get it right, the ability to scale super fast is there. For Kaizan in particular, we basically, the concept has been there from day one, where during COVID, so this is my third startup, and the first two startups spent years building and scaling client-facing teams, like sales, account management, operations, whatever it might be. Anyone, client-facing in the US, in Asia, in Europe, all based out of London. And in doing that, I've always had this, I always enjoyed coaching the teams. I always enjoyed the aspect of being with the teams and understanding how they were doing with their clients. And I had this concept, imagine if you could harness all of that collective intelligence in an organization and you could bring it to every, the 25-year-old junior who's just started, the 35-year-old who's been there for a while. How do you sort of bring all this intelligence to them to make them the best at client management and off the back of that, getting more revenue? So that was I had that in my back of my mind for absolutely ages. And then during COVID, you could see that, okay, well, so how we manage client relationships is now fundamentally going to be different. It's not going to be in the pub or down in Hawksmoor every Friday. It's going to be digital.
Which is a shame.
Which is a real
like
shame.
It's a real when I'm fortunate enough to get one, which is probably around 2020.
It's a real shame. Yeah. So,
do you think it'll go back to that?
No.
You don't think we'll ever return to human face-to-face selling, relationship building?
Well, I think we'll have. I think it will be. The equilibrium has been found, I think. So people have realised that if you've got a variety of tasks to do, maybe just doing it from your desk at home, or you've got a bunch of calls to do, maybe just doing it from your desk at home is actually just more productive than going into an office and trying to find that's not prepared to have 500 people into little meeting rooms having video calls. So I think the in-office setup is now not prepared for this type of work environment. Having said that, people do that. All of the face-to-face that you have to do and all of the collaborative work should be in the office. So I think the equilibrium we found will probably just be cemented now, and that'll be just the way it is. But I don't see it going back. I definitely don't. But during COVID, we were my old co-founder. He spent 20 years in natural language processing, and I was talking to him during COVID, going, I'm ready for the next one, like the third swing at the bat. He's like, I'm ready for the third swing as well. I was like, brilliant. I said, I've got this idea about this sort of like just an AI assistant, an assistant for anyone that's client facing. And he's like, have you been checking out all the early GPT stuff that's been coming out of OpenAI? I was like, oh no, can you tell me more about it? He goes, like, it's super niche. Not many people have talked about it, but it's really, really interesting. And our last startup, we basically was trawling the web and model it. So it was looking at every search word a user inputted, what they sort of shared on social, what they read on a website, and then from there you could model out and say, this person wants to buy some shoes. There's a shoe advert for them. So we spent a lot of time doing big data, natural language processing, just to understand intent and interest. This is and now we had these APIs and these language models to basically what we spent years building. You could do it in 5 minutes. So he said, well, this is super interesting because we've got this concept now of these LLMs, and if you were to feed in all of the digital communication that's happening with clients, we could probably start doing some really interesting stuff. And that was the genesis of it. I said, right, so we met up for a coffee in London. Kaizan came from Kaizen, which is a Japanese term for continuous improvement. And we said, well, that's what it is. It's going to just constantly learn within an organization how every individual can be better at sort of growing and scaling their clients. So we jotted down the name. Kaizen wasn't available because that domain's taken. So we took Kaizan and spun up an alpha product, gave it to a bunch of users. And what was interesting, we said, well, let's just be smart. We think it's, is it sales? Is it account management? Is it client service? Is it customer support? Where's the opportunity? But let's also not be blind to this, because let's give it to the operations teams, project teams, product teams. Let's see where the product pull is. And it was the clients, and as we thought, it was the client service and the account manager. They come back with, like, could it do this? Could it do that? Oh, I've got this would be interesting if you could do this, and then you're onto something if the thread's been pulled at, and that was enough for us to then go, right, there's enough signal here for us to say actually there is something in this, and then from that we a pre-seed round came round pretty quickly, and we could get to building an alpha and a beta, and then we basically just built it from there.
The one thing that has surprised me is, and I was actually speaking to my friend who runs technical sales for one of the big enterprise companies this morning. He has about 3,500 tech sellers.
Yeah.
And, you're at the frontier. There are people still running sales teams who'll take 5 days to put together a CTO email based on contextual information that will deliver value. That could take 3 or 4 days. That I know, and I think that you probably know, with agentic AI, real-time data feeds, understanding of digital profiles, within minutes, you could have a personalized, compelling, delivering value. You're actually delivering some insight or value, whoever receives that email, in minutes.
Yeah.
So, in the conversation I had this morning, we were talking about one of these partners been around 20 years. The idea of taking a sales process from 4 days to 2 minutes, it's incomprehensible.
Yes.
They refuse to believe it.
Yes.
And they want to move quicker.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is, in a time it takes them 3 or 4 days to engage, they've already lost.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this isn't for me about whether people are going to use AI or not. The velocity of value-driven engagement it's totally changed.
Yes. And you've
totally
agree and very, very, very passionate about this point. So people can't even comprehend yet the difference that's about to happen.
And I agree.
So, and how we articulate it to our clients or the ones or potential clients is, you just go back 20 years, go back 30 years. So you had a human with a Rolodex, right? That was how we did sales. That was how we did account management. That's how B2B worked. That's how enterprise relationship management, capitalism worked. You had your group of people out there that are quite gregarious and then a Rolodex. And then the cloud comes along and we go, okay, right, well, we can start to actually, we can build CRMs. We can manage a global workforce of salespeople or client-facing teams, and we can basically have them manually input information into a CRM. Like, here's the client, here's the opportunity, here's the probability, here's the notes from the last call. Point and click CRM software. And that's what's just happened. And people still think that's going to be the way it is, and it's totally not going to be what happens. In the same way that the CRM is totally different to the Rolodex and non-digital, agentic AI will be as much of a paradigm shift as from Rolodex to CRM through to agentic AI.
Where I've failed as an entrepreneur, and it even hurts to share this with you, is when I've been too early. And it hurts you twice, because you go too early and the market's not ready, so you lose. And then at some point in the future, after accepting your loss, it happens and someone else wins what you should have won 5 years ago, but the market's not ready.
Yes.
So is there a danger that it's too early for agentic AI in the sales process to replace CRM?
I don't think so. I think that right now, technically not. I think what you've got is a bit of inertia from some cultures and some leadership teams that maybe are of an age where they're unaware of what's possible, but also maybe where they are in their career. Do they need to double down on reorging and rethinking how they actually do anything to do with client facing? So I think that there's enough value there right now for it to be adopted. It is being adopted. It is being used, and there's a ton of value being created. But I think you're right that so I don't think we're going to be too early. I think that agentic AI and the replacement of CRM, and that's why you can see Salesforce going all in saying it's agent force. They're realizing this is what we've got to position ourselves for this. But the problem is you can't take the legacy software, the legacy way of thinking about UX and UI into this new era. It's a very different way of thinking. So I think we're totally, on the point of being too early, what it comes down to at the end of the day, and this is not easy for AI to replace, is how good is a company at executing. So you could catch the zeitgeist and you can catch the macro that's happening, but then, which is fine, that's theoretical, but then it's all down to the execution. It really is like, do you get the right people? Do you get the right content in front of the right people? Do you have the right sales motion? All of that. That's the hard part of a startup that you've got to get right. So, yeah.
One of the things I've seen in extremely large-scale Salesforce and CRM deployments is they've gamified the product to the extent where I feel a lot of they're over-tooled with CRM. And there's a feeling that, if I spend a day on Salesforce updating records and updating pipeline, I've done a day's work.
Yes.
Now, you haven't. And the actual objective of the CRM is to, deliver value to the market, drive growth, find traction, deploy undeployed software, find networks, all of those things. So it has like a noble intent, but certainly in some of the companies I've seen in the last 12 months, Salesforce has almost become a shield for people not to do the actual role of sales, which I have always felt is relationship building, finding opportunity where you can actually deliver value. And if it's a fair price, you do good business because everybody's getting something out of it. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about some of the organizations we work with, they plug Kaizan's AI on top of their CRM. So we integrate with like Salesforce or a HubSpot. So we're engaging with people whose entire job, their job title is Salesforce admin. So you've got to. There's a resistance as well to say, okay, there's a lot of ripping and replacing that's gonna happen here. The notion of what work is about to fundamentally change. So the idea that you respond to the emails and you schedule the meetings and you update the systems, that people do think that's actually work at the minute, and it won't be. So we inside our business, our system writes my emails for me, writes all my notes for me, updates the systems for me. So that to me isn't work, because that admin work will be a thing of the past. In the same way that the Rolodex or Yellow Pages was. So that's just going to be that's just going to be gone. So what we try to focus on is, the very essence of what you're trying to do is provide as much insight and information as possible to that individual on how to manage that relationship, how to manage that client, what's happening in that client's world, what's going on with their competitors, what's happening in their sector, and a bunch of agents are out there grabbing this information, bringing it into them. And then from all of the interactions that are happening, we give them some advice and tips to say, you could do this, talk about this. And then while all this is going on in real time, downstream, it's writing the follow-up emails, it's populating Salesforce for you. So this is how we think it's going to, everyone will have an assistant doing this work for them. And every single client relationship will have a variety of agents that are out there adding as much value as possible. Basically, the capacity of the human is limited. There's so much minutes in the day that I can go and do the research on the clients, on the prospect, find out information from other work we've done with similar clients in a similar sector. So that I'm limited by my capacity. But if I have now agents that are doing a variety of tasks for me and synthesizing it, bringing it into me, then that's going to be the very nature of how you leverage the agents is going to be the new work, instead of, I've updated Salesforce, therefore I've done a good day's job. So that's just to totally change.
Tell me, so when you talk about Kaizan AI,
yes,
what do you actually mean?
Yeah. So what we're building is an AI system specifically for anyone that manages a client relationship. And what we're trying to do is bring them as much insight and information as possible to deliver more value to the client and upsell and cross-sell that client as much as possible. So how we do that is we bring into the client service manager, the account manager, whoever's managing that relationship, as much inside information that they couldn't possibly have on their own. So it's going into all of the internal systems and grabbing information. It's going through all of their calls and their emails and their chat they're having with their client, and it's crawling the web and grabbing the information there. So it's basically an assistant that sits inside, they basically have an assistant as a tab open, that's capturing all of the action items and suggesting how to engage each stakeholder. And our job is to make sure that the UX is as clean as possible to say, here's what you should focus on today. So in the past, sort of the inbox was the homepage of anyone who's client facing. What's top of the inbox? What's the most important? Like, respond to that. Maybe get someone else to help me deliver that. And you try and rethink that. What if everyone had an assistant that was helping them across all of their clients? What would it bring in front of them? So that's what Kaizan does. It takes what's unknown to them, or they lack capacity to find out because of the time they've got to do it, and it brings it all into them. And there's a few subtle things that are really interesting. So if you've got 100 client service managers across the world, there is information in how others, your colleagues, are managing clients and communicating with clients, which is useful for you. There's an interesting benchmarking and gamification piece as well as how you compare with your clients versus the others. Could be like, how good are you at articulating value? Or, how are your client stakeholders advocates of your business? And we can tell the actual user, no, they're not compared to your colleague over there. They're doing a better job at creating advocates. And then to the leadership team, a system like this is like a revolution, because before, you don't have visibility. Like if you just the CRM, like where are they at what stage in the pipeline, or when's their contract up for renewal? Whereas now you just speak to a chatbot and say, what are the top 3 objections globally from our clients this month? Well, because the AI is basically harnessing all of those calls, the emails, the chat, what's been put into the systems like project management tools and CRMs, you've now got this huge context window you can dive into and give me insight that I would never have. And time to insight is really fast, and insight you would never normally have access to. So if you think about what you had, Rolodex was the first thing, then you had the CRM, and then next will be an AI system that is housing all the knowledge within your organization, but in real time collecting insight that's happening in the world that's relevant for your clients.
I'm trying to map this to how people think at the moment. And again, I'm trying to be super pragmatic to how people think, which is not at the frontier and not the Rolodex. It's probably somewhere in between. And I think about traditional ideas like the sales funnel, which we'll kind of talk about, and also, sales methodologies like MEDDIC to help qualify. So, there's some form of lead gen activity. There's a qualification phase. And then I'll just call it the closure phase. Like for my simple brand, let's break into 3. By the way, I think the funnel is dead. The idea of a linear trajectory for a client to follow through a set of sequential processes is totally gone.
Yep.
I think that's totally. I think it's much more complex than that. And I need to unpick what you're talking about. But this idea of multi-directional, multi-vector data, email, digital, agentic, I think that's more interesting. It's a much more complex, probably unable for a lot of human brains to diagnose for, because it's actually quite a zigzag. The customer's going to go all over the place and spiral. But I think about lead gen. I hate cold calling and things like that. I've actually personally refused free opportunities to work with cold callers because I specifically said to them, can you guarantee me people won't be called on the school run? Because if my brand is represented to somebody who's struggling with the kids in the car, 3 bags of dirty washing, and a number comes up that they think's important and they answer, and it's somebody trying to if that was me, I would personally put that into my memory. I would never buy from that company because it interrupted my personal space. Probably I should just turn my phone off, but do you know what I mean? So lead gen has to be some form. But the 2 things I would love you to help me with is, as a startup founder, truth about qualification of pipeline. That's number 1. How many salespeople bullshit their managers just to find another month, find another quarter? So how can Kaizan help a sales leader be realistic about pipeline? And then the second one is, if we've qualified pipeline to accept from multiple points of data points in real time that AI is telling me, yes, there's a real opportunity to deliver value here, not just to sell something, but actually deliver value. My next question, I suppose there's two, is, okay, how do we get it? What's the compelling external event that gets this over the line?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe I'm a simple, but I just see, forgetting about incoming, there's two challenges.
Yeah.
Tell me how you fundamentally change those
Sure.
two.
Well, to start with, we from day one thought actually the outbound sales manager shouldn't be where we focus. We should focus, because you had a decade of people building CRM and pipeline optimization tools and conversation intelligence to optimize Medic, Bant, whatever solution you use. And we thought it's actually different. The future is, if you're a tech sales organization, then you're going to have 300-400 sellers out there just trying to sell software and get things over the line. The future of what's going to happen with AI is actually more of the services industry. So they don't typically look like huge sales funnels, sales teams. They've got huge client managers and account managers who still are responsible for the revenue. So you still have a revenue number on their head. Retain that client, make sure you upsell and cross-sell them. So what we realized was, yes, that in more of a managed service or service-centric business, the sales team and the client service team really interact quite closely. And that's where we wanted to focus our energy. So we really focus not on not before closed one. We focus on after closed one. So you've got this client, they've been bought, they've signed up. They might have bought whatever. Like, I'll tell you an example. That we work a lot with marketing service agencies. So they've just signed BMW. They're doing a sort of a year-long activity with them, and then there's 20 account managers. They're going to manage this for you. We're going to make sure that we're doing a great job for you. We're responding fast enough, and we're adding value on what the company really cares.
So this is like CSAT, renewal, growth, internal.
It's looking at all of the signals and going, how do I make sure we're on top of this client and they're not going to go and churn? But also, are we looking at ways to upsell and cross-sell? Because that's where the real revenue growth comes from. To your point around the funnel, that's really, really hard to predict. So you can't rely on my sales team to deliver X amount of new business every single month or quarter, and I rely on that. Everyone knows the stats that actually the biggest revenue growth comes from expanding the existing book of business from what you've sold already, and then expanding it, the cross-selling and...
So once you've consumed all that energy to get in, it's almost like people die into successful deals because they've expended so much to get in there.
Totally.
Then actually delivering what they've sold is hard because of natural fatigue.
Exactly.
And also, I've dealt with enterprises where... And as you'll know, they'll bring in separate teams to do negotiations. So the actual operational team isn't tainted by the process of delivering the deal.
Yeah. So we thought, we looked at this and we said, so the nature of B2B enterprise relationship management is going to change because of digital, remote, hybrid working plus language models. So we're going to approach that, but it looks like a red ocean of opportunity when it comes to Medic, sales manager optimizations. There's a ton of stuff out there, and is there real value? And then we looked at where we had the pain point in the past was you've got hundreds of people managing your existing clients, and there's a ton of things you really care about. Like, are we doing a great service, a good job? Is CSAT NPS going to grow? Are they going to renew? And really, are we growing their client as well as we could? And everyone knows they're not. Everyone knows, those clients trust us, and we've got problems to solve for them and solutions to provide them. And is our team being proactive in that regard? So that's where we thought the opportunity, because most of the time, your account management, your client service team, they're very much they fall into, I'm not commercial, I'm a project manager. I have a craft, and my craft is this. I'm going to deliver that craft for the client, and then maybe get someone who's a bit commercially minded, and they sort of ask some questions. They get an upsell or a cross sell, and we thought that's where the opportunity is. There's so much value to be eked out from that side of the post close one. So that's where we've really focused. It's also just more interesting. It's just harder because technically it's difficult because you've got, let's say you're an organisation with sort of 15 offices around the world, and you're managing one client across 15 offices, and you've got 50 account managers on that one client, multiple conversations, multiple stakeholders, multiple deals and revenue streams in play. How do you then sort of bring that all together into a nice unified, here's where the client relationship score is, here's the risk, here's the opportunity. So that's where we saw the opportunity, is to focus actually on the post-sale. But to your point on the pipeline and pipeline management and predicting it, this is where this will take longer to play out, but this is definitely going to be affected with agents. So as you said, people don't, the traditional routes of getting the deals done, of like cold calling them and inbound marketing, like, write some blogs and hopefully they're going to search for you. And it's just, that's done. Like, no, the amount of times people are going to Google those keywords, they're probably going to use an LLM in the future, right? They're going to go direct to get the answer itself. So your inbound marketing channels are going to start to die. Cold calling, people don't like it. So what does it look like? And in an agentic world, where if you could have your agents that go, I need to go, look, I'm really thinking about, I need to buy this, or go and research for it for me. Your agent's going to go off and go and collect that information and bring it to you. It's going to navigate past all of those content channels that we were so used to. And this would probably first happen with consumer and then B2B. So this is why we've just fundamentally shifted what we've seen with the internet through to what the agentic.
How quickly is this happening?
I think in the next 2 to 3 years, here's how I think it will play out. The consumer-facing AIs will crack advertising.
ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek.
Whoever cracks the advertising within it will probably win, or be the most used model and most used platform. And it would look like you've got Google and Microsoft to be that sort of analogy from, well, Google won search. Why did Google win search over Omniture? They cracked advertising. They made it really, really useful, that experience.
For customers to find products that they want.
The search was good with PageRank, and the ads were valuable. So it won. But
that's oversaturated now, I think.
But I think the same, so on the consumer LLM
there's
side,
like a reset into the LLM.
Whoever cracks that and makes it value add will do very well. And within that will then fundamentally shift the how we buy. So you might say, look, I'm in market for a new bike, and you would normally go to a bunch of e-commerce websites, maybe some publications, and now actually you might go into whatever it's Anthropic or whichever one you're using and say, here's what I'm after. And it will go off, and it will, as an agent, speak to the agents that are within the e-commerce sites and the publications, and bring to you a variety of answers. Now that changes everything, because the very nature of how everyone does marketing on the internet and exposure on the internet is now.
Well, I think that's already. It's certain for me. Let's assume we're early adopters of AI.
Yeah.
Let's say we're in the top 10%. We're in the industry. We're tech savvy. Blah blah blah. That's already happened for me. I would not search for a product on Google. I mean, I can't remember the last time I searched anything. In fact, I can't remember the last time I opened a browser.
Yeah.
That's so. But the reason why I like to use the LLM is I feel as though it's given me an objective, vectored language-based response that isn't weighted by somebody who's creating commercial preference for themselves. I.e., when I ask the LLM a question, it gives me the answer based on language and neutral positioning. It hasn't preferred a certain manufacturer or bike or whatever because they're paying more. And do you know, my feeling is, as soon as I sniffed or intuitively thought that ChatGPT was weighting me towards a certain manufacturer, I would tense up and not trust it anymore, and I would lose the trust in it.
Yeah.
Do you see the problem?
Yeah, no, I see the problem.
So how is an LLM going to be able to effectively connect me with the right product without it being commercially weighted?
Yeah.
Did you see?
Yeah, totally. So I think the beauty of the LLM is they're providing the answers that you need, or you can brainstorm with them and you can go back and forth. And Perplexity does a cracking job at being like the answer engine. It's really, really strong. The citations are really, really good. But this is where the opportunity is. If you're in the product teams at the foundational models, to reimagine that, because they are clearly thinking, well, look, we need to crack the advertising side, because that's where we need to be an application that makes money, because the underlying API is commoditized and they're all going to be much of muchness. Okay, so you've got to crack the front end. You've got to crack the advertising to make some real money off the back of it. So this is where we have to change our mindset, because we're so used to, okay, well, with Google, I know if I do a search, I can go through and avoid the blue links to try and find publications or entities that are actually, I value I truly believe what they're putting in front of me, and it's not commercialized. Or I want to jump on YouTube and an influencer who I trust. So what does that reimagining of that look like for LLMs? And this is where I think they will totally be focused on, how do I bring ads into this in a way that's actually intuitive and doesn't make people go, oh, but I can see that you've now tainted the response because of someone's willing to pay more. Maybe you've got just one version, which is like, give me this is the agentic, go off and find my things for me. And I know it's going to bring me things that maybe could be people been bidding on. Or it could be, no, actually, I want the raw, give me the realist answer here, and it doesn't have any of the blue links in. This is the beauty. It's going to be reimagined. Also we should totally learn from the past, where every other tech shift, the first few years of the platform shift, everyone thinks they know how it will play out, and it's totally new services and products that you couldn't imagine. So you had this with you probably remember that there's a cracking video that of David Bowie when the internet's it's 1999. The internet's just come about. He's been interviewed by Paxman or something like that on Newsnight. Yeah. And he says, it's totally going to change everything. Paxman's like, no, it's just a way to send an email, isn't it? It's like, no. It's going to totally change everything in ways we can't even imagine. And then that before Spotify and what have you. And then mobile, Uber. So you've got these things that you would never predict that you could do, and services you could have off of the shift. The same will happen here in an agentic AI first platform world. So I think we can learn from what's happened, but there's definitely going to be some things that pop up that we couldn't even imagine.
First of all, I still love David Bowie and his music to today. He was a gift given by the gods to humanity, I think.
Absolutely.
How did somebody have such amazing insight into the impact of technology, 30 years before? Unbelievable.
And I was born in Bromley and he was born in Beckenham, so.
Nice. Are you trying to connect yourself?
Totally connected to that. Just total connection to Bowie.
We all want a bit of that.
Yeah. Our postcodes were quite close to each other.
That'll do. I'm thinking you can very easily extrapolate how powerful the LLM winner's going to be, if there is an LLM winner. But, OpenAI with ChatGPT, I personally believe it feels like they're a long way ahead of everybody else right now. Because it's just such a great product. It's such a great product.
Yeah.
I know people use it so much they're embarrassed to say how much they use it.
Yeah.
You go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is basically ChatGPT talking to itself now, and everybody looking really clever.
Yeah.
But there is a risk that monopolizing that conversational interface to the internet and the data within the internet feels dangerous. No one should have that amount of power.
Yeah.
But then I see, DeepSeek, I see Amazon. Google are a freight train of innovation. The big players are there. It's going to be highly competitive. How do you think that's going to play out? Do you think everybody's going to use I wonder if there's going to be even an obfuscation layer that's objective above the LLMs that you would speak to, that would interface into all LLMs, and they could all be bringing different advertising.
Yes.
It almost feels like there are additional layers that are going to happen to protect us from another Google owning search.
Well, so I think a couple of things on this point. So I don't think we actually can rule out Grok from the where AI goes. Everyone, at the minute you go, it's Gemini, and it's going to be Copilot, which is mostly powered by OpenAI and Anthropic. But where we're going to really see the impact of AI is going to be around robotics as well, and within our houses, having a bunch of robots doing a variety of things for us. So yes, they've got the interface on our phone or VR headsets or laptop, and maybe that's going into Anthropic. But the AI impact will be in the physical world as well. And I think that if you look at what Grok have got access to.
When you say Grok, you mean Elon Musk's XAI
exactly.
Grok? Because there is another Grok with a Q.
There's a Q, yeah, Grok, exactly. That's like an inference, a different way of doing inference. But I'm referring to the other element, which is Grok. And the reason because that's going to be, how do you take the real world data, which is all of the Tesla cars and all of the robots will be walking around, and take all that real world data.
He also has Starlink, which is going to give a huge amount of content.
Exactly. And you take the real world data. What do Anthropic and OpenAI have already stated they're struggling with is we've run out of data. Right? We had, our oil was the data. We happened to create the internet. It was brilliant. We could train an AI based off the internet data. But they struggle with real world data. And that's where Grok's a very unique, interesting angle. So I think that thing I wouldn't rule them out. However,
can we just explore that a little bit longer? Because my analysis of what's happened certainly in the last 5 years, and you mentioned it, and I wanted to kind of touch on it very slightly, and I want to get onto this Grok point, is that back in the day, big data was batch processing, for machine learning batch processing. So you get all your banking data, you get all your advertising data, and overnight you'd run it through a big machine learning batch, and it would come out the following morning with insights from that data. The profound change that's occurred with the pre-trained transformer and LLM is real-time data. So what we're acknowledging is the future of sales or in digital engagement or whatever is about real time. I think we'd agree with that, right?
Yes.
Speed and velocity.
Yeah.
And then, your point on running out of data, that's because the original training of the models was like a batch process. They were going to suck up everything that existed, and everybody's kind of done that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm kind of, I don't know whether I'm aligning to your thesis here, but the point is, whoever has the ability to capture all the data that's being created and moving around in the world is going to have their ability to train and react and then therefore proact on that data faster than anybody else.
Yes.
Which suggests there's actually going to be more power in the network than the's ever been.
Yeah. And if you think about this,
this is where BT and companies like that need to wake up.
Yeah. But they can't, right? You don't get.
I don't want to derail you from Grok, but that's a profound insight, Glenn. So thank you so much for that. But I hope I'm interpreting you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you why would
the answer isn't to create more synthetic data; it's to tap into the real-time feeds and movement of data.
Exactly. And but then you look at this, so play that through and go, okay, that's an interesting place. Grok have got there's a lot of interesting real-world data they can use alongside.
On X.
And on X, and then you take the what they can do with their standard LLM. So you can say, well, okay, what about Gemini then? Because it's still going to have, that's still got, cars driving around, like doing street view of everything.
They will be tapping into AWS and all the business data, surely. Yeah. I don't know what the T's and C's are if you've got data in AWS, but...
Well, I think people leveraging, I think most of the proprietary model builders won't use customer data, because the minute if it ever got out, they're done.
Yeah.
If you can imagine if suddenly name a big enterprise who was doing some interesting stuff with OpenAI, and it came out that OpenAI trained on a bunch of the data that had been moved in. Every other enterprise customer then stops working with them. So I genuinely think that they actually won't use the customer data. But why is not looking at the Grok example of why I think there would be an interesting runner and could do very well in terms of who wins the AI game. why not Google, which has also got all this access to sort of real world data, but their legacy, and they've got to that existing media business, that advertising business, that infrastructure, the cost base. It's very difficult to take and change that. But to your point on the, do you like the idea that it ends up being one or two applications that we use, the same way that we had like Facebook and Google, right? So Meta wins social and Google wins search, and then that's the way that it played out in those platform shifts. And Android and Apple win mobile. So what does this look like for AI? And you could say, well, look, it probably is going to play out the same, but we should absolutely be, I think, have some hesitation and concern here, because if I think back to my 20s, when
recently, then
very
quite
recently, super recently, like very recently, the explosion of the internet and Facebook. I was explaining it to my parents. They're like, "Why would people just connecting with all these people, like sending photos of what you've had for dinner? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Mum, it's just the future. Like, it's just the future. Right? We're going to real time connection to anyone in the world." And she's like, "Well, I don't understand." So we all dive into it, right? And we go all in. It's brilliant. It's all upside. Everything's changing. Everything, the old ways are done. This is the new way. And we don't. And then we now look back at, okay, right. So, election fraud and interfering with elections, kids' mental health, doom scrolling and what it's done to all of the issues that, especially now that you're children, you go, oh my God, the fact if I could just, the idea of them and what they could be looking at scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. So we do go all in on these new platform shifts, and then we should actually learn from what's come in the past and go, actually, well, we did go all in there, and now a bunch of repercussions that we are on society and culture that we're having to think about. Everyone's an influencer, and it was the idea of wandering around the streets and seeing everyone looking at their phone was a bit weird, and now it's just totally normal. The fact that everyone was videoing themselves, it was a bit weird, and now it's totally normal. So all of this is going to play out, and you think, well, what does that look like for where do we need to actually have some hesitation? Because there's a lot of value and a lot of change that's about to happen, but where should we be? Where should we learn from what happened with social, and what happened with mobile, and learn from it?
Do you think there's a need for sovereign AI, i.e., why should we in the UK, Europe be kind of stuck between essentially North America and Asia? Because you use the word culture there, and values and morals, I've added those, but if they're being, by their nature, integrated into these, decision-making and execution platforms, should we not be trying to capture our own culture and values and morals? So do we need some form of, that goes beyond, whether it's Amazon, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, IBM, do we need something that represents our country, that aligns with our social values, our public infrastructure? Or maybe there's not. But it's
so I don't. So I think you're onto something, and I'm definitely not smart enough to know the answer.
No, I don't.
But there is. You never have sovereign AI where it's been built and trained and constantly innovated on, but owned and managed by governments. I think that was never ever. Never going to happen. But what's the structure we do need around the ethics of this and the guardrails? Really, really difficult, because you've got a race at the minute to have the best systems, because the best systems will have a fundamental advantage in the future with productivity and warfare. So you've got this race to have the best systems. There's going to be a bunch of knock-on effects to then how we live our lives. How do you then build it into government to have the controls around this? It's a big gnarly problem.
Your energy and knowledge. I mean, I feel as though we could talk all day, Glenn, but I am, going to have to actually come back to, if you were if you wanted to get a message out there to a account manager or somebody who's handling, a complex customer, let's say we have an account manager who's managing a multinational complex manufacturing company or media company. Like, what are the top few things that they're struggling with right now that Kaizan or your way of thinking could really, really help them? Improve.
Yeah. So we benchmark this internally. This is what this is what gets the team up at night, or gets the team up, is to say, right, how much value and assistance have we done this week for our users? So we have a few ways of benchmarking this and understand this. So one is a reduction in what we call admin. So we try and aim for 2 hours a day. So an admin for us would be having to respond to emails that actually don't need to, that don't require much thought. So about 50% of the emails that we draft for individuals, yes, I'm free at 3:00 tomorrow, please put it in my calendar. Oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, the client said this, or a client emails in, where do I find this in the system? Oh, you find it on the third tab on the left, all of that stuff that is just not work. We try and take care of. So about 2 hours, and there's a bunch of other things on the list of admin that we take care of. So write their notes for them, populate their CRM for them, write their follow-up emails for them. Just some of the drudgery that it's like they'll look back on going, oh my God, I can't believe I actually used to have to do that myself. So 2 hours a day in admin saving is what we benchmark ourselves on. The time to insights. Anytime they jump into the chat interface to say, oh, what did the client say a month ago about X, Y, Z? We give them the answer immediately. They've not had to spend 15 minutes, half an hour going through a bunch of things to find it. So there's a time to insight. And the last one, which is the hardest ones to track, but it's probably the most sort of, where the real ROI is does the NPS, the CSAT, and the proposals generated per client grow? So every day we make recommendations saying, Ian, you could do this today, you could do this, you've got a call coming up with this client, I suggest you do X, Y, Z. Oh, did you know, Ian, that their competitors have done this? How about you suggest this to the client? Does all of those suggestions lead to the client going, oh my God, you are proactive, super knowledgeable, and you've got killer ideas. Yes, I'm going to spend more money with you. So do we get an increase in the average revenue per user per quarter? Is a lagging metric that we track. So every day we can look at the admin and the time saving and just basically having an AI assistant, in their day. And then each quarter we can say, that's interesting. We have seen NPS grow, client experience grow, and have they given you more money? That's how we think about it. In the future, it'll be how much they're using the agents. So that every account manager will have one like research agent that's constantly out there looking at their client's competitor set. Like, what have they just announced? What are they doing? And accessing different data sets that you don't get on the open web, and bring this into their world. So the mission for the business is unlimited knowledge and productivity for client service teams. So that's easier said than done, but that's the plan.
Will we still need human account managers in 5 years?
Yes, we will. The nature of the job will change. So all of the companies we work with, they've got their gold clients, want to spend the most money, and they've got the clients that are the bronze clients that maybe spend the least amount. And what they're seeing is, if it works for their business, is actually why not have your own company's avatar, digital AI that is you can converse with, communicate with, respond to. That it's a co-worker in the team, but maybe put it in front of those bronze clients that spend £5,000 a month, and you could add more value to more of those SMBs with your service, but you can't physically put account managers on them. You haven't got it's economic doesn't make sense. So that will happen where every company trains their own AI that can liaise with clients and can manage their business and take their business and add value to them. That will happen. But you'll still have the core account manager set who are, with all that comes with AI and the new systems and the new services and the new products, you'll still need a bunch of people out there going, trying to synthesize the information, understand it, and be strategic to the clients. So I think just the nature of of how it's structured. In exactly the same way it worked with CRM. So you had all these like growth marketeers and RevOps teams that were all built because the CRM and cloud was enabled. You didn't have in the era of the Rolodex, and then you needed them. And I think it's similar. It will just shift the job titles and the work that's done with using different AI systems.
So it sounds like you're going to end up with a more human, I'm trying to, not improved, but more human-led engagement at the top. But the lower tier clients, less financial value, are going to be increasingly digitized.
Yes.
Do you think that line will move up as the AI becomes more sophisticated?
I don't think so. I think that you'll get this hybrid approach where there's a variety of your clients where your company's AI takes care of everything, and your core account team or client service team or your knowledge base will focus on the biggest opportunities and the clients that are the hardest to work on. So I don't think it will go. I think you'll end up with this sort of like hybrid system. But the fun part of all of this is it's going to be connected to the capabilities of the models. So you've got the theories as to where it's going to end up, but we also need to see where the capabilities of the models go and what clients expect and what clients want. So I think that you can build the infrastructure to enable you to have that setup and that structure, unlimited knowledge for your client team to be as awesome as possible with all the data at their fingertips they could ever need. That's the theory. We hope obviously that the models get better and better and better, and what do the interfaces look like, and then on from the managing clients with your company's own AI, good in theory, very hard to pull off. You've got access to which data can you access? There's a whole bunch of security and privacy questions. How much do you trust the responses that it's giving and providing and answers it's giving? So this all needs to be figured out.
Do you know, I want to put this. It feels to me there's an opportunity. If I was an end organization looking at providers of services, I almost feel like I want to prefer a provider who is enabled with Kaizan.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I know the phone ain't going to go unanswered.
Yeah.
There's going to be some digital real-time engagement 24/7, 365. They're going to be proactive on my needs. I mean, I hate advertising. I don't want to advertise your business because this is objective. So if we take Kaizan out, but I'm getting a feeling we enter an era where, as an end consumer, I want my providers to be enabled with AI so they can be proactive to my needs.
Yes.
They can be faster at supporting me in my business.
Yes. So couldn't agree more. And also we've made a big bet on this. So our big bet is that whether you are a fully service-based business or a managed service or a tech service business, whether it's IT services, HR services, financial services, marketing services, if you basically are providing a service, we fundamentally believe that these companies will have an AI infrastructure and an architecture they're built on top of. That the old way of just being humans running around and maybe like going into a project management system or Outlook, that'll be the past. And then you'll move into where we've got these agentic systems and these AI systems that these service companies are built on. And if that happens, which I think it will, then you are fundamentally screwed if you don't have the ability to cope and deliver the services of the day. I think a good analogy would be when the very first startup, we did personalized advertising for companies, and the internet was just starting. So you'd work with brands, you'd work with the brand and the agency, and the agency might only do out of home and press, and they'd be like, and then the brand might say, well, can we do some digital stuff?
No.
Oh, no. That's not happening. That's not really, it's small at the minute. And guess what? The agencies and the companies that went all in on digital and the brands that went all in on Another good analogy. So you're the 20 years ago, the brand was like, you might need a website now. Do we really? There's only like 5 people on the internet. No, trust me, you'll definitely need and then obviously you do. You might need a mobile app. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, guess what? You do. So how consumers and customers expect to engage with your business changes. Mm-hmm. And the same will happen with in B2B. So we get this from our clients where they say, you'll be glad to hear we put you in, when we do new business pitches, we put you in as a slide about how great our client service will be. Like all of the promises on and the SLAs around response time and speed and quality of service, a guarantee we'll deliver it because we're using an AI to actually help us do it. So, and in the future, you can imagine that the ability of an account manager to have on the pulse real-time knowledge that they need to deliver the best value and money to their clients. If you've not got that available to you, then clients won't choose you.
To be contrarian, because I feel as though I want to be objective.
Do it.
There's a scenario where, the Canadian Airlines didn't refund a ticket. There was legal issues, AI hallucinations.
Yes.
What happens if, AI advises a customer incorrectly? We need human in the loop. These are the, brand protection, risk management aspects of customer relationships. What happens if this swears that somebody is rude to an executive and a client? Like, Glenn, it's easy to become a tech bro and buy into this whole digital-led engagement. How do you ensure to your customers and their customers that that's not going to happen?
You can't. So we're very open and honest and say AI is not perfect. So in the same way that humans aren't, is your existing sales manager and account manager phenomenal and not making any errors ever? No, of course they are. And it's exactly the same with AI systems. There will, do we track every action item from every client meeting that goes into a follow-up email? No, some will be missed for a variety of reasons. So we're very upfront and we say it's not perfect. It's fundamentally better and it is the future, but you can't expect perfection. And I think hallucinations is really, we see minimal now actually. But there'll be certain things that are missed off because you're dealing with a system that's non-deterministic by nature. So unlike software, it's like, Boolean logic, do this, and that comes out. This is non-deterministic. There will be chances there could be some errors, whether in a variety of aspects of the product from our perspective, but also in general. I think most of the customer support systems out there that like Intercom, for example, and Zendesk, I think they're quite upfront with their clients as well and say we'll do our absolute utmost. But just like your humans, some errors will occur. So I think that's what you have to be as upfront and as honest as possible. And I think what's important is the showing the work that's as much as you possibly can that goes into the output. The minute you remove some of the black box, here's why it's done that. Here's the thinking behind the output. Here's the data it was used. Here's the thinking. And you can go, actually, that's why I can see now why the error was made. I think if you bring that to the fore more, we've got to do a lot more of that. It's an area that we've got to do a lot better at. But I think that sort of helps mitigate that risk.
You're a 3-time founder. Each time can be a little bit harder. There's reputation, there's legacy. You've got very high levels of conviction on this. We've talked through the benefits not only in the sales process, but hugely improving just that ongoing customer engagement.
Yes.
But what we're talking about is AI becoming a fundamental component of inter-organizational relationships and therefore a foundational building block of capitalism in its very self. Handing that level of accountability and responsibility to machines built on language is a fascinating area.
Yes.
if this plays out as you feel, do you believe AI will take us to a utopia or dystopia?
Utopia. We've spoken a lot about AI today from a point of from a Kaizan perspective, and some of what's happening with the models and the technology around the models and what it could mean from a consumer's perspective. But the impact that's going to be on all of medical, for example, is going to be so profound, just on its own as an industry, that you can't not explore it because of the potential harm. So it would be like, it's slowing down the aviation industry because of the off chance that you're going to get suicide bombers on planes. So I think there's just too much upside that, and you can't slow it down. And it's out the bag. It's the opportunity is too big. So utopia, with a caveat. Like I said, when it came to the tech platforms we've seen and the shift we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, how do you learn from the impact on society that it has? And you try and put some guardrails around it, which is a lot easier said than done.